Welcome to episode 6 of the Movement Logic podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Court, and I am here with my co-host, Laurel Beversdorf. And today we are talking about exercise. What counts as exercise? How much are we supposed to exercise? How guilty are we supposed to feel if we don't do enough exercise, whatever that means? Why has there been historically and still there kind of is so much emphasis on cardiovascular exercise in terms of the guidelines that the government gives us, and how does an individual person's needs change based on their age, their health, their lifestyle, things like that. Laurel and I are coming at this from different perspectives. I'm a PT, Laurel is a strength coach and a movement teacher, and as always, we just want you to know that we decided on this topic for our conversation, but we haven't had this conversation before. We don't script these. We just really like to talk and learn from each other, think out loud, riff off of ideas. And that way I learn from Laurel. And on a very, very rare occasion, she learns from me.
Whatevs.
So
that's why you're here.
That's right. So our question this week is, how much should be in like quotation marks, how much should you exercise? So Laurel, I have a question for you. Off the top of your head, can you tell me what are the government guidelines for how much, this is a thing, this is a real thing, for how much someone should exercise every week?
If I were to guess, I would say it's probably skewed toward cardio, and just based on what you said at the beginning, I have no idea.
Okay, so the answer is
run out of time.
Yes, sorry. I'm afraid you've lost.
Never in jeopardy does someone not write anything, though.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes there's just like little,
really?
Yeah, like dots, because they were like, I don't
That's not good. They need to take at least one guess.
Just a stab in the okay. So stab in the dark. What do you think? It's here. I'm going to give you a clue. It's
okay.
A number. How many minutes?
10,000 steps. Oh, minutes.
Oh.
Okay, minutes. I would say 20 minutes 3 times a week of cardiovascular exercise. That's what I used to think it was.
That is incorrect.
Yeah.
So they actually categorize it in sort of two. They call it moderate intensity or vigorous intensity, and you either should do 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. And the way that they categorize those is moderate intensity is like a brisk walk. They say like you can talk, but you couldn't sing. Your heart rate is up. You wake up.
What if you just can't sing though?
You can talk, but you shouldn't sing. And then,
I must always be doing moderate exercise.
That's right. And then or 75 minutes vigorous, and vigorous they say is, like running or swimming or playing a sport. You could only say a few words before you would have to stop and catch your breath.
Yeah, this reminds me of when I was pregnant in my OBGYN. I was like, don't get to that vigorous intensity level of where you can't have a conversation. As soon as you've gone that far, you should reduce the intensity of your exercise, which I found to be very like simple, straightforward, and easy to do.
Yeah.
And helped me feel really good about my exercise during pregnancy. Yeah.
I mean, the descriptions are great in terms of like what is moderate, what is vigorous, right?
Yeah.
And it's really it's kind of an RPE, but with more RPE being a rate of perceived exertion. I had a second where I was like, what does it stand for?
Yeah.
So, but so RPE, rate of perceived exertion, is what people use a lot of the time in strength training, where it's like your sense of how hard you're working out of 10, and like, keep it around like a 7 or an 8. So you're not like completely everything out of the tank, but you're working pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
So, but this is not perceived. This is actual real exertion in terms of breathing, right? So it categorizes it as cardiovascular because we're going to think about that in terms of your heart rate is up, you're breathing more intensely, your muscles are working to a level where they need more oxygen, and so your experience of it is like, either you can talk but you can't, or in Laurel's case, shouldn't sing, or you can only say a few words before you have to like stop and catch your breath. And I think those are very relatable guidelines in the sense that like everyone understands that, right? Or you've had that experience in some way.
Yeah, that's it's a really good one for cardio.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's what's interesting.
I'm trying to think
This
of
is
how I
That's
did
not
that
it.
with strength training. Yeah, I know.
So there's more. They say as well, and this is
Mm,
to my knowledge, this is new, and anyone who knows better than me can jump in and correct me. They've so it's not only that. So you have to do your 150 minutes moderate or 75 minutes vigorous, and 2 days or more strength training, which is new.
yay!
Great. It's
So
very That's why
CDC, Center of Disease Control,
yes,
right? So
centers for disease control.
Centers for Disease Control. So these are the scientists who are interested in reducing the rates of disease in the United States. So
Yeah,
this is where and why these recommendations have been
exactly.
handed
And
down.
they're looking at it in terms of like, heart disease as being, the number one or number two, uh, thing that is oh God, words that our people are suffering from, right? So that's part of
Yeah.
also there's so much cardiovascular. Um, Now, what they because I was like, well, where do you put something like yoga or Pilates, which generally speaking, you're never really out of breath.
Mm.
Um, and it obviously with yoga, it completely depends on the type of yoga that you're doing. Same
Mm.
with Pilates, it can be much more gentle or it can be much more vigorous. I think probably at the highest level, it would be moderate. I don't
Yeah,
think
maybe
I
even
think
that.
it would be like moderate and below. Like I don't know that it would necessarily
It's definitely not steady state. That's the thing. And when
right.
you're going for a
Right.
run, when you're doing like cyclical cardiovascular work, like cycling, like swimming, like running, and you're working in that moderate intensity level, you're probably doing steady state cardio.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not running intervals or doing tempo training.
Right. Um, and then so I was like, okay, well then let me look at these numbers. What would that mean on a practical level? Like how many things should I be doing each week? And
Right. How do I break up that time and like schedule it
exactly.
into my
And
week?
exactly. And so and oh, this is the other thing. It's 150 minutes moderate, 75 minutes vigorous, or
Mm.
some combination of the two. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes of vigorous is the equivalent of 1 minute of
Mm.
moderate.
Yeah.
Um, so I live in California. I really like going hiking. Hiking,
Mm-hmm.
I would consider a moderate, sometimes vigorous, depending.
Yeah.
And so,
Uphills. Those uphills are
yeah,
probably
there's
vigorous.
listen, we got some hills around here. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like doing one hike, maybe taking one, maybe a vinyasa yoga class or some other sort of like moderate level, class, and then strength training twice a week. And that's it. That's it.
Mm.
And maybe, I mean, to me, I'm saying that's it because to me that doesn't seem like that much, but I'm also someone who, lives in the movement and exercise world. And for other people, that's like, I don't have that much time, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And this is if you want to like your goal is simply to stave
stay
off,
healthy. Yeah,
stave off disease according
exactly.
to the
Yeah.
CDC.
This has nothing to do with,
Performance.
performance or training
Hmm.
for an event or,
Yeah.
training for a skill or anything like that.
Yeah, because
Um,
frequency would need to be increased for
yeah, exactly.
cardio
Exactly.
and strength.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Uh-huh.
How much do you exercise every week?
Oh my gosh. So right now, a lot.
Yes.
Actually, I took last week almost completely off. I went to CrossFit one time and I went on some long walks. So actually, no. I mean, when I say I take a week off of exercise, it's
I know,
like
that's the thing.
such
I'm like, I didn't do
bullshit.
anything last week. I did some strength training. I went on 2 hikes, and people are like, "Excuse me."
It's really, really skewed
Yeah.
because it's my job.
Right.
And I really rely on it so heavily for mental health
Yes.
that is something that I'm realizing more and more as I age that, looking back retrospectively, how much I've relied on exercise for my own mental health, like how I've really managed my mental health with exercise for a very long time. But I would say that on a week where I'm exercising a lot, I will probably strength train 4 or 5 times a week.
Hmm.
So I'm training a lot. And then I don't do any cardio unless the people at CrossFit tell me to, which is not very often. And so that is actually something I see as kind of a blind spot, at least in my
Hmm.
conditioning. I'm probably not getting enough cardiovascular stress
Yeah.
to enhance those systems in my body.
Yeah.
But I do hikes, but I do them very slowly because I'm on it's a very rocky, rooty trail, and I'm looking out for snakes. So I am
Fair.
not moving super fast across those trails. So yeah,
That's fair.
so I would say I'm very heavily skewed toward strength
Yeah.
training
And
and plyometrics.
mhm.
I do a fair amount of plyometric training,
Yeah.
which can be, pretty stimulating for the
Pretty aerobic.
cardiovascular system.
And
Yeah.
my experience has been like there's plenty of strength training that for me has felt cardiovascular. I mean, you
Hmm.
swing a kettlebell around for long enough, your heart rate goes up, you start sweating. You're breathing hard.
Yeah, I mean, kettlebell training is in some ways really similar to plyometric
Hmm.
training, except there's no impact, which is kind of the cool part about it. And yeah, definitely, kettlebell swings are one of the few yeah, kettlebell swings could be classified as strength training, and also has the ability to increase your body's aerobic endurance. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
depends on how much you're swinging.
Right. And for how long and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So here's the thing. Like you and I are coming at this from a perspective of movement and exercise are a priority.
Mm,
We both work in the world of it and we both value it in our own bodies. And from my perspective, at least as a PT, a lot of my job is throwing people around. I mean, I'm not throwing, but like
you
I
sound
have
like
to
a
be.
great therapist.
People come in and say my neck hurts. I'm like, you want it to hurt? Watch this, and I throw them up. No, but I have a strength requirement to be
Yeah.
able to do my job. If I don't
Hmm.
maintain my strength, I'm not as good at it. I actually start to hurt myself.
Yep.
Like I remember when I first started doing the amount of manual therapy that I do on people, I had like really, I don't know what it was that was going on. I think it was just the volume increase was so much. I would drive home from the clinic every day with my arm on the armrest and an ice bag on my hand
Oh, that's not good.
because it was so miserable.
Mm,
So I have if I want to be able to do my job well, I have to be able to sort of train for my job.
yep.
However, the average person does not have a job that is, about being at some amount of fitness, or they may not automatically value it the way that, you and I do, probably most of the
Hmm.
people listening to this do. How do you motivate people to get
Mm.
interested in it? What do you, I know what I do a lot of the time. What do you do?
Hmm. So I find that the benefits of exercise are inherently motivating if you can get someone to stick with it long enough to see those benefits. And so, one of the things that I do as a teacher is I try to talk a lot about the benefits.
Mm,
And when I work one on one with people, and I work in live small group strength training, I also start to notice improvements that individuals are making, and I make a point of noting that for them.
hmm.
And I write down, how many reps and how much weight they lifted. And I make sure that they know that this week they lifted an extra rep, or this week their rate of perceived exertion was lower, or this week they lifted extra load. And I really strongly play up the objective, measurable, and potentially also perceived benefits that they might be experiencing. And I make sure too to tell them that this is what you might be experiencing or have you noticed, instead of this is what you should be experiencing and this is what should be happening to you. Not telling them what they're feeling, but really helping them to maybe become aware of the fact that they are performing, feeling better in their life. And maybe it's connected to all this work you're doing. People also reach out to me to tell me these things.
Hmm.
And so I know that the benefits of exercise are inherently, they're self-reinforcing. Why do people not exercise then? I think it's probably because there's no immediate gratification.
Mm,
It feels like a form of punishment for some reason because
hmm.
of the stories they've been told or the stories they're telling themselves about it. it's very complex. But then when they're put in front of the opportunity to exercise, there's no immediate gratification. Things that I consider to be immediate gratification are human relationship, human interaction, an inspiring environment to exercise in. I really look forward to going. So, for example, I go to this CrossFit gym really to get out of the house. It's more mental health than anything else. The gym is this huge warehouse. It's a really exciting place to lift weights. And they play like kind of hardcore music, most of which I don't really like, but the vibe is kind of like, yeah, and like I'm into it, And I'm like one of the like lowest on the like levels of like fitness there. Like it's amazing to me. And that's also inspiring to me is like, wow, I thought I was fit. Turns out in this population, I'm really not. And so I think there's also things like playlists, which can be really super important. Things like, is this something that you can actually work toward improvement in? Like, can you see results? Can you see higher levels of mastery over time? Sometimes that requires an external eye going, wow, your downward facing dog or your handstand or your, kettlebell swing is really coming along. And sometimes it's just a matter of that person having a goal and seeing that they are making improvements and making progress toward that goal. I think these are all gratifications that can really keep people coming back. And then there's all the intrinsic benefits of like I had my private clients. I teach a couple of two women and they are on vacation now and they had to schlep a whole bunch of stuff to Fire Island for their vacation. And they were like, oh, we can only do this because of Laurel. I'm like, no, you can only do this because you are putting in the work to strength train once or twice a week, and they're brand new beginners, and they're so excited about like all the things that don't hurt anymore,
Right.
So having people share those things with you and being open to holding space for that, but also as a teacher, if you are a teacher, really play up the benefits. And there's I think a lot of evidence to suggest that is an evidence-based way to improve compliance, right?
Could you give me an example? Because you've been talking about this about playing up the benefits, and you've talked about things that people have reported back to you. Are there things that you talk about in a less specific to each client or student, and more sort of generally like this is going to help you carry the groceries in from the house, or like are you peppering that into when you're teaching?
I definitely am. And I'm doing it in various ways. Like I'm sharing my own stories and I'm also sharing stories from other students while keeping them anonymous. And basically it comes down to the way that I think about it is our comfort zone, right? How comfortable do we want to feel in our lives? And in order to feel comfortable in our lives, meaning pain reduced, pain free, and capable of participating in the activities of our lives that are meaningful. So for perhaps a grandparent, that means being able to play, rough and tumble on the ground with their grandkids, or go play catch, or, maybe if you have a dog, it's like being able to keep up with your puppy. And if you have, a spouse who really likes hiking, being able to, go on those hikes with your spouse. Being able to sleep on the ground in a tent, like all these things that are physically demanding, that are cushy lives and are, outsourced lives. Like we outsource everything in the name of convenience, like that don't require us to have to endure. But then when we have this like opportunity to really live, we want to live, right? And we want to be comfortable in those higher demand moments of our everyday life. So we take a little bit of time, not much, right, as it turns out of our week to actually get even more uncomfortable than that, to stress our bodies in the laboratory of exercise, to, stress our cardiovascular systems to the point where it is uncomfortable, to stress our muscles in strength training to the point where we're feeling the burn, or we're feeling the fatigue, or we're feeling, this is a heavy weight, so that, right, we make ourselves uncomfortable in those small moments so that we expand the comfort zone of our life. And so that you can relate to any type of meaningful activity that you find potentially challenging or that you have found painful in the past, like riding in the car for 2 hours, if you've got an hour commute there and back, like how those activities are necessary, meaningful, required, and how if we take time to prepare for those, they won't be uncomfortable. They won't cause pain.
Yep.
And then we have so much more attention mentally, cognitively, energetically to devote in those moments to being present and to finding even deeper meaning beyond the distraction potentially of our body going, I don't know if I can do this. This hurts.
Yeah.
This is scary, right? That's kind of the meta of what I talk about, but obviously in little anecdotes and stories.
Yeah.
My daughter's 35 pounds. She's well on her way to being 35 pounds. And
I thought you were about to say my daughter's 35. I was like,
we feed her a lot of spinach.
She is Benjamin Button
and high quality protein and calcium, and she's growing. No,
listen,
she's 30. She's 35. Yeah, she's 35 pounds, but she's 3, and so she wants to be carried and picked up and like held and like I'm savoring this phase because I know it's not going to last forever, and so the ability to bend over. She's lying on her back, pick her all the way up and carry her up the stairs while I'm holding on to something else.
Right.
Like, I'm glad I can do that. And it's not a burden.
Exactly.
Because I strength train.
I had a whole bunch of ideas come up. That's just things that when you were talking kind of came into my head. I, in the PT world, I use this kind of goals-based work the same way, a slightly different take on it. It's like, what I say to patients a lot of the time is when they're coming in, is there something that you are not doing right now because of your injury? Is there a sport you're not playing? Is there something you'd like to get back to that you have thought was like just long gone and whatever? And so then not only do we have that as a tangible goal where it's like, oh yeah, you wanted to get back to running, and here we are 4 weeks later, and you're starting to run again or something like that. But it also works to guide what I'm doing with the person in that session, because it gives the exercise more meaning because it's always aimed at a goal. So it's not like, well, today I felt like you need to do abs or something like that. It's very, very like, see this shape we're making here. This is the same shape that you make when you're running. We're making you do it in a harder situation so that when you go to run, it's actually easy, or whatever the example might be. And that I find for people who don't have that sort of natural motivation, maybe constantly reminding them of what their goal is and how this, to your point, uncomfortable thing we're doing now is going to make the thing that they want to do more comfortable.
It's huge.
And
it's
I think
big.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning as well, and this is something that it took me a while to kind of feel like I could say legitimately. It took me working with a lot of different patients and seeing a lot of people, heal their issue or get stronger or get out of pain. Where in the beginning for people, especially if they are coming in with pain, but even if they're like, you know what, I'm 55, I've never done any weight training, I'm suddenly worried about my bone density, I have no idea what to do, I don't like exercise, it always felt like punishment, stuff like that. I find that in the very, very beginning, if I hold the confidence of the outcome and I don't make it something that they have to blindly believe in or hope that will come out. And so by that, I mean, like, if they say, do you really think I could go back to, going for a walk every day? And I don't lie, I'm not, but, or I talk about it in a sort of like stepwise procedure, but I also say something like, based on what I've seen of other people that are similar to this person, or just how I'm getting the sense of them as a person, all of those sorts of things, I'm usually just like, yes, absolutely. And I hold the confidence of that because I've seen the example of it over and over. And that's just sort of the gift of having worked for a while and having enough of your own evidence that you can draw from. I remember this person that I had recently who had low back pain, disc herniation, all this kind of stuff. And was, that kind of pain a lot of the time is debilitating. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's been going on for a long time, it just ruins people's belief that
Yeah.
it could ever go away or be better.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they were like, do you really think you can help me get out of this pain? And I was like, yes, because I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it, variations of it a lot. And I was extremely, and he was like, really? Okay. And I know that um, my confidence in what I can do, my skill set allows me to hold that space for people when they're not sure. And then as they see results, they take over the confidence part, right?
Right.
And then you don't have to do that so much.
Yeah.
And that's also that thing when people say, like when people say to you, oh, they'll come in and be like, I went swimming, it didn't hurt my shoulder. It's all thanks to you. And I do that same thing where I'm like, no, no, no. I just suggested some stuff.
Right.
You decided to do it.
Right.
Just because I told you to do a squat, you're still you could have walked out of the room if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
So making the person recognize that it's their work that they've put in
Yeah.
that has made the difference, not that I did it for them, so that
Yeah.
they get that autonomy over how their body feels and their strength.
Right.
And the last thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about stressing the system,
Mm.
that idea, which is sort of anytime you're learning something new, you want to be in the sort of what they call the stress area, but not the
Mm-hmm.
strain area,
Right.
either physically or mentally, right? So
Yep.
we want to be in the stress area where it's like, this is different, this
Mm.
is hard, but it's not breaking anything like
Right.
physically or mentally, right? This is not so impossible. I'm not going from zero working out to thinking I'm going to work out every single day,
Yeah.
right? That's too much. Versus that when you get into that strain period where it's like you're overloaded, you're emotionally exhausted, you're
Yeah.
trying to cram more workouts into your day than you have time for,
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. So some of it is bringing it into your world or helping people bring it into their lives in a way that's doable and
Yeah.
setting realistic guidelines for themselves or
Well,
goals for themselves that
can I
might be
share
like,
some good news?
sure.
I mean, at least from strength training, which is my wheelhouse, is that beginners can make the most improvement to their strength in terms of percentage wise than any other training age.
Nice.
So beginners will improve more rapidly than intermediate or advanced lifters in their strength and their muscle mass. So in the beginning, basically everything works
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need to do very much. In fact, there are studies showing that single set training once a week.
Mm-hmm.
What? Single set. That's like a set of like 12 reps that are challenging. You have to be going to that really uncomfortable place once a week can be enough to cause increases in strength, to yield increases in strength. Now, you will quickly plateau. That will quickly become not enough, right? And then you've got to bump up the frequency, but 2 times a week for a beginner,
Yeah.
1 to 2 times a week. And a beginner in strength training is anyone who's been lifting weights for less than 2 months. So, you have those first 2 months to make a ton of progress and not have to input very much time and energy.
Yeah.
But the energy you do input needs to be pretty, again, because it has to be a stimulus. We talked about like a stimulus is a stressor that makes a change, not just any stressor, but one that actually causes the changes you're targeting. For strength, the stimulus has to be, 75, 80% of a 1RM, and you're doing no more than 12 reps before it's really quite challenging.
Sorry,
and
it's a 1RM. Could you
a
do
1RM, yeah, thank you, it's a theoretical amount of weight that you could lift one time and one time only. It's very hard to test for 1RM because you've got to warm up. And then by that time, you're maybe fatigued. And then every day is different, depending on how much sleep or what you ate the day before. So it's also a moving target, right? It's going to change. But you can be, pretty accurate in terms of what your 1RM is with something like a 10RM and lower test. So if you did picked up a weight and tried to lift it 10 times and you got to pretty close to failure on that 10th rep, you could fairly accurately extrapolate what you would be able to lift one time using 1RM charts, which you can just Google 1RM charts. You get more accurate results the higher the load, the closer to your 1RM you are. If you're lifting, say, for 5 reps or 4 reps, this is probably something in the realms of an 85 to 90% 1RM. and that's going to give you a much more accurate 1RM estimate. But basically, if you're targeting strength, you have to be working within a percentage of your 1RM. And a lot of times we're not. We're working on strength endurance,
Right.
okay, which is also a really important capacity to develop,
Yeah.
and should be developed alongside strength.
And,
And
you know, the
yoga's
one thing,
and yoga, by the way, is wonderful for strength endurance in many
yes.
cases, not for
Yeah.
all muscles, but for many of the major muscles of the body.
Yeah.
But yeah, what was the original question? It was like, we're talking about how often you need to work out. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you want to improve your strength, the good news is like once or twice a week in the first 8 weeks consistently of training, 2 sets, not even more than like a couple of sets. And I think a good percentage to start with is like an 8 to 12 rep max. So that would be a 75 to, I guess, 75 to 80% 1RM, or 70 to 80% 1RM. It doesn't have to be a super heavy load. And that's gonna result in you actually becoming aware of your increased strength in your daily life. You're going to notice if you stick with strength training for 8 weeks in that dosage, and it's recommended that you don't go above that because that's where
Yeah.
we start to enter into that realm of strain, as you call
Right.
it.
Right.
You will notice that you have objectively improved your ability to do certain things in your daily life as long as you haven't, overdone it. It's not like this is going to be a panacea for everyone to follow this protocol. You do need to have solid technique. You probably benefit from working with somebody, right, who's an outside eye who can help you if you're feeling like you really do need that or want that. And you will notice, and that's not that much, right?
It's
You
really
could do
not.
30 to 45-minute sessions a week,
Yeah.
and make a big change.
So I want to sort of turn back around to yoga for a minute because I want to talk
Mm.
about why or how we sort of got this idea of like hashtag yoga every day, or
Oh.
that that it how it sort of
Mm.
became uh, just sort of a widely held belief that in the yoga community, at least, and this is my experience. I mean, yours may be different, but that you were supposed to do yoga every single day,
Every damn day.
every damn day. And why might that actually not be appropriate for people? My feeling is the people that I see who come into the clinic and have, yoga-based injuries are generally the people who are doing yoga every day.
Mm-hmm.
Not because it's automatically a bad idea to do some yoga every single day,
Mm-hmm.
but the mentality of it is such that the yoga is usually their only physical exercise.
Mm-hmm.
They are not practicing like a sort of gentle or restorative yoga every damn day. It's taking yoga and turning it into, you know, like a workout or a gymnastics challenge or it's the people who are doing like the vinyasa 2-3.
We're talking
And
about asana, really, then, right?
yes, I'm sorry. Let me be clear. I'm talking specifically about asana, but people who take the yoga asana practice as an extreme sport, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how what I see with a lot of those people when I talk to them about let's broaden your movement diet, and apart from yoga, what else are you doing? And they're like,
Mm.
okay, I'm like, okay, maybe you should, also on a day go for a hike or maybe a long walk, or maybe do some weight training. And what I see is a lot of reluctance
Mm-hmm.
to do that. Very
Mm-hmm.
often I see people who, I suggest that to them, and they're just kind of like, or if I'm like, well, your hip hurts because you have been doing lotus pose. Not that there's anything wrong with it necessarily, but let's
Mm-hmm.
say in this instance, every single day for 15 minutes, and your particular anatomy does not like it that much. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why like your knee is now giving you a problem and your hip. Yeah. And the idea of, so what I want you to do is like, let's leave that pose out of your practice, and also
Mm-hmm.
maybe just take a couple days and don't do any yoga. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
I took a knife and stabbed them in the eye when I said that,
Mm.
But I remember I was that person. I know, I remember it. When I first started to have problems with my hip was when I was about 27.
Mm.
And for everybody who probably doesn't know, because this is why would anyone know this? I had hip dysplasia, which is, yes, it's something that happens to large dogs, but it also happens
Mm.
to people, especially women.
You say that like I knew it happened to large dogs. Like,
No, a lot of
check.
people,
Yep,
people know, people,
large dogs.
I say hip dysplasia, and people are like, oh, like in Newfoundland? I have had this more than one. No, because it does. Anyway, I am a large dog, apparently. And it's a very catch-all phrase, but essentially what it means is that there's something about the way that your acetabulum and the head of the femur, your hip socket fit together that
Yeah.
is over time problematic,
Mm.
causing injury, causing arthritis, all these things. And
And
anyway,
it's genetic, right?
yes, and
It's highly genetic.
it usually comorbidities with
What is comorbidity?
oh my bad,
Such a scary
comorbidity.
word.
No, first of all, comorbidity is a terrible word.
Comorbidity.
It's like here's something that's also going to kill you. It's what it sounds like, but really
Here's
what it means,
the here's the colleague of morbidity.
yes, they
Comorbidity.
work together. These two things are going to be in charge of your death. No, but it just means, let's say you're working with somebody and they have asthma and they also have diabetes. So it would be like, well,
Uh-huh.
they have asthma and their comorbidities. It's just whatever like other things are going on with your body. But
Uh-huh.
so I've gotten well off topic, but hip dysplasia and
No, it's good.
scoliosis often show up together, just as a general FYI for people. But
By the way, I want to say I think one of the reasons I like listening to podcasts is because the nature of conversation is to kind of trail off in different
yes,
related directions, and I think that's the way we learn.
definitely,
As
definitely.
long as we don't trail off for too long and get
Yes.
lost.
Well, so we got
I'm enjoying this hip dysplasia
the story of my large
lesson
dog
within
transformation.
the lesson.
Um,
Yeah. And dogs
so
and dogs. Yeah.
yeah, listen. Um, so I went to I was 27. I was practicing yoga every damn day. I went to my first physical therapist ever, and they told me that I had to stop doing yoga, and
Hey.
it was crushing.
Hmm.
And but I was like, okay, I guess, and I did for a while, and I didn't feel any better because they didn't give me anything else to do separately. Like in place of it, they were just like, just don't do yoga anymore. And then eventually, I just went back to yoga because I was like, well, in the words of Cartman, screw you guys.
Yeah.
Like it didn't. I didn't see it affect any change in my body. But why do you think, in particular in the United States, in the yoga community, we see so much of this emphasis on you have to do yoga every day? Do you think it's an idea around mastery of yoga?
I think that we've got a tendency toward excess in many ways and directions and fields and indulgences in this country. And
Hmm.
I think yoga is victim to capitalism, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
I think it
yeah,
comes from the ideals espoused in capitalistic thinking, which is that more is better. And it permeates all aspects of our lives. And it's one of those, when we talk about the psychosocial model, when we're dealing with the social influences of pain or the social influences of racism or poverty, or, capitalism is the CEO of it underpins a lot of
hmm
what we're talking about. And it's difficult to
hmm
talk about because it's such a big thing, right? And it's so all encompassing. um, we are living inside of it, and therefore we cannot always see it, right?
yeah,
So I think that yoga, as a traditional spiritual practice that originated in India, is something we could potentially do every day, and would
hmm
maybe the world would be better.
probably.
But asana is this has become the poster child of yoga, and because it is so easy to put on a poster. Uh, and big ranges of motion are impressive and sometimes beautiful.
Hmm.
And the people practicing and being put on posters are increasingly thin and white and beautiful.
Yeah.
And so this is capitalism, right? This is how we
Hmm.
sell yoga. This is how we commodify it and how people profit off of it. And I think that whether or not people know that they've bought into these ideals of thin white beauty, and or the kind of the ideals that tag along with yoga that are very much wrapped up in alternative medicine and health, and a lot of unsubstantiated claims about like detoxifying the body and juice cleanses and all these other ways that people are, I think, at the bottom of it, just starving themselves at the end of the day and trying to lose weight, because again, the thin ideal. I think that this is what is undergirding this drive to want to do yoga every day. But the story people are telling, which makes it extra insidious, is that this is my spiritual practice. That I'm doing this to transcend this earthly body and these earthly concerns and this earthly suffering, and in a way dissociating from it and bypassing it, right? Spiritual bypassing, dissociation, which I can tell you a lot about because I was really, really good at it. Spiritual bypassing is raised up in it with my conservative evangelical Christian upbringing, which is largely about spiritual bypassing from my perspective. It's that really, I think. And but then, and I think we can both relate to this, like then when we hear don't do yoga at all, that kind of negates the fact that yoga asana and the spiritual practices that sometimes skillfully accompany it and sometimes don't, right? Depending on where you're doing your yoga, has so many benefits that it can give us. Yeah. I have benefited probably of all the modalities I've engaged with that you could term exercise or movement. Yoga has been the most profound and most life-shifting. And if you take that away from people, that's not good. But if you train people to believe that they need to do it every day, especially the asana side of yoga, that's also potentially going to cause problems for a number of reasons. One is, do you have any time now to do your strength training and cardio? Because yoga is not giving you that.
Right.
And are you cranking on some joints that are not prepared to be cranked on the way you're cranking on them, i.e. the knee and lotus pose? So those are my thoughts.
I think ultimately, I think there's an interesting similarity between using it, because we see, I mean, I brought up the yoga world because that's my personal experience, but I am 100% positive that it exists in the same way in the strength training world, in the CrossFit world, where people are just like, more is better, heavier is better, that kind of stuff. Not that they're necessarily encouraged that that's the right thing to do, but it's like my old client's dad, who is in his late 70s and was having neck pain and went to PT, and they said, do 10 shoulder shrugs. I don't know why. And so he went home and he was like, well, they told me to do 10. So if 10 is good, surely 100 is better. So he started doing 100, I'm not even kidding, shoulder shrugs every day. And then he went back and he was like, my neck feels worse. And they were like, well, yeah. So I think this tendency towards the sort of like overdoing it. I know, I love that story so
But not
much.
just humans. I had a dachshund once who ate an entire pizza. So, I mean, dogs are, we're on the topic of dogs today. Like, they love
not
excess
possessing
too.
a lot of self-control, especially around food. They're not really, thinking about the future basically ever. So
Is that what it is? Sometimes that's what excess is about too, is you're not thinking about the
not
future
thinking about
consequences.
Yeah, exactly. What's actually happening to me. But I think that there's sort of a similarity in what we're talking about in terms of using the full yoga practice, not just asana, with a goal that is not external, and using exercise also with a goal that is not external in terms of a appearance. That training to be and as a way that ultimately is much more empowering for people who maybe are new to working, to exercising, and much less judgmental, than a lot of people. A lot of people aren't exercising because it's a world they've never been in, and going into a gym is terrifying because they feel overwhelmed, and there's all these people in there who look super fit, and they don't know what the machines are, and it's a horrible scenario. There's a lot of negativity that a lot of people have associated with exercise based on their past experience, being
Yeah, and
laughed at gym class in high school and all that kind of stuff, right? So
rightfully
yeah,
so.
absolutely. So this idea of using exercise not as a, what you should do, right? A sort of shaming idea, or even as a you should do it because you should be thinner because society is telling us that thinner is better, not versus like, well, if you do it, when you go to the pet store and you just apparently this whole episode is about dogs. When you go to the store and you are buying, because this is what I used to have to do, when you're buying a 35-pound bag of dog food, you have the ability to pick it up from the ground, hold it on your shoulder, and walk out to the parking lot and put it in your car. And when they say, do you need help? You can say no, right? So
Yeah.
that's, to me, those are the kind of goals that are so much more personally empowering for people
Yeah.
and ultimately more valuable. And sort of a similarity in the way that yoga in its wholeness can be practiced as a way not to change anything externally, but to change something internally,
Yeah.
right? And I
And
think
yoga
that's
can change things externally as well.
of
And
course,
I
but
do think that
meaning,
many folks benefit from the mobility benefits of yoga.
yes. I meant like not your goal is not the, be the like do the forearm stand with the sunset behind you
Right.
and be
Because
really skinny and in a bikini.
I'll say this, that I still have not found a modality like yoga that is able to shift my feeling. And I mean, like my sense of interoception, which is my
Mhm.
ability to pay attention and notice the details of my inwardly felt experiences, to shift my mind, my train of thought, to shift my like overall baseline level that I feel of relaxation versus kind
Mhm.
of stimulation,
Yeah.
and also confer these, I guess, more neuro muscular benefits
Mhm.
of strength endurance, or the soft tissue benefits potentially of improved joint flexibility and mobility. I know, for example, I've done Feldenkrais, which has
Mhm.
brought me even to a more relaxed state mentally, but I don't feel that Feldenkrais is stressing my body in
Mhm.
is sufficient enough a way to make the changes that I'm able to make, which seem much more significant with yoga, although I know it's working on a different thing too. It's not
Mhm.
working necessarily on mobility, it's working on coordination and patterning and timing of movement.
Yeah.
I will say though that for me personally, yoga holds my attention a little bit more effectively.
Mhm.
And because I'm the kind of person who really wants to feel things in my body.
Mhm.
And then it's also, it's got these cultural aspects to it that I find very that give yoga so much more meaning outside of just the physical realm. Like, I really appreciate the history and culture behind yoga. I appreciate Sanskrit being incorporated into classes. I appreciate that sometimes we're chanting and doing mantra practice or doing pranayama practice or meditative practices. Yoga is so diverse
Mhm.
of a physical practice, not just a mind practice. It's a diverse physical practice of so many different, actually separate modalities that are included in the wider system. And I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I cannot think of another system like that that is able to produce this significant amount of mental shift and change. It's really that. It's like
Yes.
you said, like the changes that are happening internally are really profound with yoga, I
Yeah.
find.
I agree. I
Much more
agree.
so than CrossFit.
Well, and I think some of it, I mean, we're sort of on a tangential conversation, but I think also
Yeah.
some of it is what holds your attention, right?
Yes.
Because that's what helps. And so for different people, different levels of exertion hold their attention. And
Right.
not just different people, but there's days when uh like if something happens and I get real mad about it, if I don't do something that is like I'm like, I got to go swing a kettlebell around, or I have to like get on this reformer because I'm at work and I have an hour break and do like a punishing level amount of work. Like sometimes that is the only thing that gets
Hmm.
stops my like rumination in my brain, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it's but that's an extreme example of when I am in a heightened emotional state, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I need to go do something extremely physical, that is going to exhaust me so that I can't, I run out of the mental energy to keep being
Yeah.
this, emotionally
I'm the
overwhelmed.
same way. I'm the same way. I think there's different tones to my felt levels of psychological stress that
Mhm.
require different interventions.
Yes, absolutely. There's
And
times when I hope to be meditating and I sit down to do it and I'm like, this is, I need to
yeah,
I need to do this while moving. I need to
right.
try to be walking and like, I can't be still physically at
And
the
then
moment.
there are days where the day prior I did a lot of strength training, a lot of plyometrics. And so
Hmm.
the following day when I need that input, I'm definitely not going to be doing that the next
Right,
day, right?
right,
I'm going to need to do something that's more active recovery,
right.
like walk in the woods or yoga. So
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I feel like this has been a very interesting conversation. I don't know.
yes,
I enjoy all of our conversations. This
me
is,
too.
in a lot of ways, starting this podcast was an extremely selfish act for me because I was like, I just want to talk to Laurel more.
Ah, I feel the
So,
same way. I feel the same way. Yeah,
because I
and I
just love,
love the amount of learning that I'm undergoing
oh,
in doing this too.
thanks.
Yeah.
I like assumed that was about me when maybe you're like, I'm just researching a lot of things when I get
No,
ready to
I'm
do.
learning. Well, no, see, it's all connected. It's like yes, I am researching things, but then I have to tell you about it, and it
Right.
needs to make sense to you.
That's
So
right.
like that's another level of understanding that I have to acquire.
That's right. All
So,
right. Well, a note to our listeners: you can check out our show notes, and I'm going to include that what you were the link, any sort of link to a run wet. Whoa, what?
boop, 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 boop.
Oh, one wet max.
A one wet max.
One wet max.
That's when you jump in
Oh boy.
dry.
Yes, you just go into the pool.
You
You're
just
totally
jump,
dry,
you're
and then
dry,
you jump into the
and you
pool, and you
just
are wet
cannonball
to
it.
the max.
You got a
Um,
one wet max.
just a note to our listeners, you can check out our show notes for links to the references we mentioned in this podcast. I'm going to link to the CDC guidelines and also where you can find that information about a one rep max that I had to really enunciate that Laurel was talking about. You can also visit the Movement Logic website. You can get on our mailing list to be in the know about different sales on our tutorials. If you like watching videos, you can watch the video version of this episode on our website at movementlogictutorials.com/podcast. If you want to see what my quote unquote recording studio looks like, and to be clear, it is a closet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It's a nice looking one. Plants grow great there. I don't know how you
they,
do it.
they're really thriving on absolutely no natural light. It's incredible. I just must have the greenest thumb anyone's ever
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us
They've
for the
transcended
podcast.
photosynthesis.
That's it. If you like this episode, it really, really helps us if you subscribe and also rate and review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We would be super, super appreciative of that. And please join us again next week for more movement logic and more of our loosely held opinions and pretty strong muscles.
Wasn't it strong opinions loosely held?
Yeah,
All right.
we're holding them loosely and we're strong
Strong muscles
and loose
that I can
morals.
shake loosely. Loose morals. That is a dangerous woman.
Yeah, that's right.
Strong muscles, loose morals.
Loose morals.
Watch out.
All right. Bye, everybody.